If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon, and so many more places. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, it's totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hello again and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with RJ. If this is your first time listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow so you know exactly when we release brand new episodes. Also, don't forget to share. If you like what you hear, share it with everyone you know. Help get this message worldwide. This episode is going to be focusing on what would happen if we actually told the truth about history. Now, this might not seem like a really big deal, but in fact, it's affecting pretty much all of our cultures. It's affecting everything happening all around us in today's time. It's really interesting. I find it really interesting that once upon a time, the news used to actually report it as they saw it. Like, they reported the news. They reported honestly and unbiasedly what was going on. You had interviewers getting out there to just flat out get to the truth. They wanted to interview you and ask you questions and find the truth, find out actually what was really happening, rather than try to manipulate your answers into fitting their agenda or their story. You know, some of the greatest interviewers out there were neutral. They just ask direct questions. They try to keep the guest accountable. Like Barbara Walters is a legend when she comes to that, because she built her entire career off of being a very skilled interviewer. She wasn't going for one thing. Like, she was going for to discover the truth. She would ask direct questions. She would talk to her guests, and they would feel comfortable talking with her. But then again, when some of those guests would try to manipulate the answers or to avoid certain answers or kind of BS her, Barbara wouldn't let them get away with it. She would be very direct, and she would call them out, and then they'd be put up against a wall to either answer the question or run off the stage. You know, I really wish we had more journalists who were focused on finding the truth rather than trying to sell a story. And I've shared a story before that when I first got to Iraq, they were talking about, like, the news, all the journalists that came out there, they were always focused on the good that we were doing. And they were talking about, wow, you know, they just had an engagement right here in the city. They fought, they destroyed a bunch of the city. Now they're rebuilding it. They used to show us all the times, you know, giving soccer balls to the kids and giving candy to the kids and even giving our own food to the children, playing with the children, talking to them. They used to show that on the news. But people stopped watching because, you know, let's get real. People don't like the truth. They want drama. That's why some of the most popular TV shows today have, you know, all the critical ingredients. They've got drama, they've got betrayal, and they've got sex. You have those three, you can make the crappiest TV shows a hit. Look at Jersey Shore. That show was full of really interesting but stupid people. But yet, once you started watching, you could not turn away. You were just stuck there looking at them like, oh my gosh, I just got to know what's going to happen next. I hope so-and-so gets their face knocked in. And you see stories about the Kardashians and stuff, about how quote unquote stuck up they can be, or how, you know, they don't care about their fans unless the camera's rolling and it benefits them. Like, we have all these different feelings, all these different stories, but then you turn on, you know, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, or the Kardashians as it's now called, or whatever. But you look at these shows and you watch one episode, you're stuck. You have to know what's going to happen. And you see all these wealthy people on TV, on these shows and stuff like that, living these lavish lives. We don't ever have anybody, like, any TV shows from people in the hood or people in, like, low income areas and kind of relate with them. No, because everybody wants to be wealthy. Everybody wants to succeed. So we want to watch shows with people who are succeeding. But if you really look at the actual show, if you were to be like to see the real history of, the real situation of what's actually happening, a lot of us wouldn't watch a lot of these shows because they're scripted. The reality is not real reality. It's scripted so that you'll watch it. That's it. Like we all know, a long time ago, Kim Kardashian, she had a show and she was engaged to by Chris Humphries, which was a professional basketball player. Well, he did surprise her with an engagement. He actually did surprise her. He got on his knee and he asked her to marry her. But Kim Kardashian looked at the camera. She's like, I don't like the way I look. I don't like how this went. I'm going to go get changed. We're going to shoot this again. I'm just going to act like I'm surprised. So she got dressed, got her makeup on, and then she came in and she pretended to be surprised. Chris Humphries proposed all over again. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. These reality shows are far from reality. It's so funny. If you realize, just like the old school show Jerry Springer, I had a friend actually, I had a friend and his family actually go on that show. I don't remember what the reason was, but they actually went on there. They said that they told me that when they went down there, they were flown first class. They had a high-end room, everything, all the expenses paid. They were treated like royalty. And then once they got to the stage, they were told, all right, you know what? We need drama, so go ahead. Don't worry about it. We're not going to let you actually fight, but we need you guys to attack each other. We need you to get out there. We'll pull you off before any real damage can be done. So they went out there. They made a fool of themselves, and they fought. They tried to fight, and the security came out there and pulled them out, and everyone's Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. But the producers are out there telling them, we need you to fight. We need you to sell this story. So people want to watch drama. People want to watch other people get mad, which is why people watched Maury for so long. And even though Maury Povich was the exact same show every day, which is why they made a show called Paternity Court, because they're like, oh crap, people really like watching this. It was the same show for the longest time, Maury Povich. In the case of 9-year-old little Tesla, I don't know, that's the first name that came to mind. In the case of 9-year-old little Tesla, Sean, you are not the father. And then the woman would run off the stage. Oh my gosh, I swear it's yours. I swear she's yours. And then the other one's like, look, Maury, look at that baby. That baby's got a bobblehead. I don't have a bobblehead. That baby's blonde. I'm not blonde. You're actually you got brown hair. It's light brown hair. Yeah, but I'm not blonde. That's not my baby. Deshaun, what are you going to do if little Tangela is your daughter? I'm gonna handle mine. I'm gonna stand up and take care of mine. They always had the same answer. Didn't matter if you were from Texas or you from the hood. It doesn't matter. They always had the same exact answer. I'm gonna take care of mine. I'm gonna be there for my child. You know what I mean? I'm not a deadbeat. And then as soon as the results are read, in the case of 6-year-old little Tangela, Deshaun, you are the father. And then the girl gets up all the time. I don't care how classy she is. She always loses her class and gets up and goes, I told you I wasn't with anybody else. I told you, this is all your baby. This is your baby. And then he walks off the stage mad. And then he comes back on the stage to save face. I'm going to be there for her. Can I see my daughter? All of a sudden he's holding her and just putting up a facade. But the thing is that all this acting is to sell a show to us, to make us watch it. It's not about telling the truth. If we were to actually see, if they were just to do one take of the Kardashian show without scripting anything, we wouldn't watch it because of how much planning goes in, to actually planning these trips, actually doing these things and setting up situations that people want to watch. They actually are shooting a show, so their focus is viewers. Do whatever it takes to get viewers. That's their focus. The reality shows are not reality. The only real reality show is actually Cops. Because they were actually on scene doing this for real. But there'd be a lot of pullovers that you don't see because there's just nothing interesting on them. So you got one camera crew with one cop, and everywhere he goes they're going. So he'll do like 20-30 different car stops and nothing happens, and then all of a sudden a car stop happens, and that's when you see, because they're not going to show you someone got a speeding ticket. Nobody cares about watching someone get a speeding ticket. What they do want to see is a foot pursuit. They want to see, he's on foot, let's go, we're chasing him. And then you see the camera guy chasing. You hear the camera guy breathing real hard and into the microphone. And it's funny, especially when he has to go, like, you could tell, you don't ever see the cameraman, but you can actually tell his shape by how he approaches a fence. You see the cop, like he's filming, you see the cop just jump over that fence. And then you see the cameraman starts slowing down and he looks at the fence. And then he runs around the other direction because you're all like, yeah, that guy's not in shape. But if the guy is really in shape, you're going to see the camera go right over that fence, and he's going to jump in. They don't care if it's somebody else's yard. They're going for it. So I started thinking, I was like, you know what? I wonder, what would the world be like if the news told the truth? If the news wasn't about, making people feel one way or the other, but if the news were to actually call a ball and a strike, I would tell you that Black Lives Matter would not exist. And again, before anyone gets offended at that, I'm a black man saying this. Because if people were to actually call a ball and a strike, Black Lives Matter wouldn't be a thing. Black Lives Matter didn't care about helping Black lives. All the millions of dollars that they made, they did not send any of that money to the victims of people who or police killings, whether you're black or white. If any cop or any black person that was killed by a cop, not a single person received any money from the BLM organization. What did the owners of those organizations do? They moved out of black neighborhoods. They didn't give money to predominantly black schools. They didn't try to go fight any laws, change laws to help Black lives become better. They spoiled themselves and left the hood. That's what people do often. They go on this, they see an opportunity to make money, and that's exactly what they do. Look at the George Floyd case. What did you see? You think that all these people were supporting the cause? A lot of people were not focused on the cause. A lot of people were focused on making money. In fact, they started making these t-shirts with George Floyd's face. They started immediately going to make all these different t-shirts and all this merchandise and stuff like that to just sell, to make money. It wasn't about the movement. It was about making money. So it's really important that we start looking at things as they are instead of believing a narrative that we're being fed. Hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, TGITD, thank God it's this decade. I'm all about that truth and the corruption of people looking out for money in the North American culture. I'll just include Canada because I'm Canadian. I don't want people to think I'm saying I'm above you. Look, I'm from Canada, though. If you're in the States, and it sounded like you are, I was in Georgia in December and January because I was dating a girl from Georgia, but we broke up in January. I came back to Canada in March, and I sold my house that I bought for $500,000 for $1 million. And now I'm doing my world tour, but I wrote a book about racism and about truth. It takes my poetry from 96 when I won 7 scholarships all the way to 2021. And I agree with you. Those leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, they were about the money. And it's a shame because most of those organizations that are registered, a lot of them that are registered charities, including some churches, and I'm a minister.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Including a lot of churches, and some corners of the States, there's a church on the northeast corner, on the northwest corner, on the southwest corner, and the southeast corner, and all of them are crooks. Okay, I'm telling you straight. There's some ministers that are sinister ministers. The way they minister, if you're a female, they make you have a baby, and they force you to have an abortion. That's the kind of ministry they have. And I'm about purifying that church because the thing is, I realized why. I was looking for funding at one point, and I saw there's all of these grants if you want to open up a church. There's more grants that if you want to open up a church than loans for a regular business. Okay, if there's a regular business, you might not have good enough credit. Look, I tried to get a loan for my business so I didn't have to sell my house. It's the same thing in Canada. They said I didn't have enough years of revenue because I didn't have revenues because I had a job. Okay, I have a business. I opened my first business in '96 with my high school friend that we were actually friends since 1981. Okay, we owned a web design company our last year of high school. And then I opened my first corporation in 1999, and it's never charged anyone anything for anything. It's called Free Shares Incorporated. The best at making people happy for free. The idea sent me to the psych ward.
Wow.
Okay? Real talk. You ever have a foundation of a corporation send somebody to the psych ward? I was diagnosed with schizoaffective psychosis disorder. I saw the vision for my whole life, and I'm still been teaching that. It's called the target resume. It's what you want your resume to look like when you're 120. Okay, a lot of people plan for the next 5 minutes. They don't even plan for that, so they trip, and then they're surprised when they can't get a job because they were naked on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to teach the kids that that's not the way. like an OnlyFans is not a business, because you want to be able to hire somebody and then move on to something else. Nobody's going to be watching work when you're 55, and the government's not going to have money to make people wait until they're 65 to retire. So we're going to see some of these people working and stripping when they're 60.
Yep.
Nobody's going to be watching them now. It's a problem, because the young people say, well, that's the fastest way to get money and stuff. And then if you want to get money the fastest way, then watch out for the cops, because look, the fastest way to get money is not legal.
True.
So the reason I'm speaking about this so passionately, because the little girls are dying, because they're the way that it looks like the best way to make money is to strip. And it's a sad thing on social media, because I saw a girl, she must have been like 20, little bit, and she was offering boys a PS4 to take her out on a date. This was when the PS4 was new. Wow. Now I guess she probably upgraded to a PS5. Can you imagine? She said, look, I think that we should be good to our boyfriends. I'll give you a PS4. Can you imagine? She's bribing guys to take her out on a date, guys. This is how bad it's gotten.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and she was pretty, so like imagine what the girls that are not that pretty do. Can you imagine? So and I'm a minister, because the thing is, what people should do is try to solve the biggest problems, and that's one of the biggest problems on social media. So that's why I speak on it. But I agree with you. I believe Black Lives Matter, because my life matters, but that organization, the leaders were corrupt.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate you joining for that. I'm 100% about that. Like, when the whole term All Lives Matter came out, a lot of people immediately pushed them to the side and said, oh, you guys are racist. You guys are trying to take over our movement. The thing is that when you add color to something, you immediately cause division. And it's not necessarily the good or the bad. Now it's just you're causing division against races. But like, let's call a ball and a strike a strike. If you look at the Million Man March, there were tons of white people, Jewish people, Asian people, Latinos, not just Mexicans, people that were all types of Latinos, people from Guadalajara, people from Venezuela, people from Peru, like people from all over the world came to do this Million Man March. And if you look, let's go back to history, because so often we hear people, especially in my own ethnic culture, I hear so many times, we were slaves for 400 years. We were slaves for 400 years. I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired, man. If it wasn't for the white man, we wouldn't be slaves. I have an episode of my podcast, Real Talk with RJ, and the episode is the hidden truth about the history of slavery. And if we would really go back and tell the truth about slavery, the animosity between whites and blacks would not be as severe. In fact, I think it will be cut in more than half. Because the reality is that the white man didn't go over to Africa and start kidnapping Africans. That's not what happened. Dominant African tribes were kidnapping weaker African tribes. This was the original black on black. They were out there kidnapping the weaker tribes and enslaving them, and then selling them to the Portuguese, to the Spanish, and to the English settlers who became Americans. That's why you see, because of Underground Railroad, we have blacks all over the world, and the Netherlands, the Polynesian countries, and the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, all over the place, because slaves were in all over the world. This was not an exclusive thing to blacks. The first slaves on American soil were actually Native Americans. But because the Native Americans were able to navigate, they knew the land a lot better, they can get away from to their slave owners, and they can actually escape to other tribes. If you were to actually do real research and look at the census, you would see that back in the 1800s, there were almost as many black slave owners as there were white slave owners. Why don't you learn that in school? Because the schools have always been, ever since media has been a thing, the schools have a narrative that they want you to believe. When I was growing up, I was taught that Democrats are for the people and Republicans are racist and for the rich. I was taught that back in the 90s, when in fact, they don't tell you the real history about these parties. They don't tell you the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King himself was indeed a Republican. In fact, there was this place called Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street was considered more profitable than the regular Wall Street. They were thriving. Fathers were in the home. Fathers were honorable to their wives. The divorce rate amongst blacks was extraordinarily low. And the unemployment rate amongst blacks were extraordinarily low as well. Who was it that destroyed Black Wall Street? It was, and if you look in the history, it's been heavily erased. There's very little traces of it, but it was members of the Democratic Party. In 1916, the Ku Klux Klan was founded by members of the Democratic Party. The Republican Party was founded to abolish slavery. The first Republican president was, in fact, Abraham Lincoln. Now, a lot of people say, well, they didn't free the slaves because they actually cared about blacks. Who cares why they freed the slaves? The fact was they freed the slaves. If you look back at history and look at the fact that we speak a language, our language is actually the result of a curse. If you go back to the Bible and see the Tower of Babel, all these people were stricken with different curses, different languages. Our language was a result of a curse. But this good came from that curse. So even though they wanted to get a strategic advantage against the Confederate Army, the very fact was that they actually freed and abolished slavery. They stopped slaves. So the Emancipation Proclamation doesn't have a single black signature on it. It's signed by white men who saw us as equals and also were fought for us. So if we go back and look at history, it's not a white against black thing. In fact, there was a black and white against black thing. Because there were black slave owners, there were white slave owners. There were and there's lots of people who say, well, slaves didn't own, black freedmen didn't own slaves like the white slave owners did. Actually, they did. There was different reasons for slavery. One reason was because the standard of, so in order to be a free man, you had to meet certain criteria. This was the government's way of making sure that they didn't have to support you and you weren't a burden to society after you'd been freed. They wanted to make sure that you were going to be able to support yourself, that you were going to be able to take care of yourself. So sometimes a man would become a freedman, but would not be able to support his family, or to get his family freed, or they wouldn't qualify for the standard. So they would end up buying their family, their children, their wife, and everything like that. They would buy them, and they were on the books. They would be slaves, but the way they were treated is they were treated like a family. So that was a fact. That was actually one of the reasons why, black men or black slave owners had slaves. The other one was there were certain black slave owners who were trying to compete against, in actual fair market, working and getting paid and paying people. They were trying to compete against those who were white slave owners who had slaves. But they couldn't because of the fact that the profit margin was so significantly different when you have a payroll. When you have to pay people, you're losing money. But when you're getting free labor from slaves, you're gaining a ton of money. So it's the same thing about, women being pimps. You have women out there who have prostitutes working for them. It's the same thing. It's just a lucrative business that they decided to be part of. So that is actually what happened. That's how slavery was owned amongst blacks. And in fact, history is crazy. When you go and actually look at real legitimate history, it's crazy to see what was really going on. Like, we go back and we say, I've heard so much amongst my own ethnic culture, oh, blacks have had it the worst, man. No one's ever had it worse than blacks. Let's be honest. Let's go back and look at history. The Jewish culture, the Jews, the Hebrews, they were slaves before we were. They were slaves to the Egyptians. That's a historical fact. They were slaves back then. They were getting beat and they were working in the desert. They weren't working in nice plantations where there was green vegetables, where they got water not too far off. They were in the desert, working crazy hours. And also, when you see on TV where black slaves now, black slaves were just being murdered just for the fun of it, you got to understand the truth behind that. If you were a rebellious slave, that's one thing, because they had to make an example of you to take care of the other slaves. But they weren't out there just butchering and beating their slaves just because they felt like it. Slaves were expensive back then. That's like buying a Lamborghini in today's times just so you can destroy it. Your average person is not going to do that. So they were taking care of their cattle. That's how they saw slaves. They were cattle to them. They didn't just go butcher them because they served a purpose. They made them money. So beating the crap out of them to where they couldn't work and killing them and maiming them was not the norm. That was the extreme when that slave would try to escape or being rebellious and they needed to make an example. So the amount of slaves that came over or that were traded from Africa to the United States, the amount of slaves versus the ships that went down was a significantly lower, the ships that went down killed far fewer slaves in comparison to all the slaves that successfully made it to the United States. The Jews were massacred. There was a genocide to eliminate all Jews from the earth. The Holocaust happened. No one has had it worse than the Holocaust. They literally went and hunted them down throughout the entire world. They were aiming for that. They completely tried to erase the existence of Jews ever being on the earth. That was the goal of the Third Reich, of Nazi Germany. So they were actually being murdered and eliminated. They were being exterminated. That's the word I was looking for. They were being exterminated. There was no, you keep working, I'm going to feed you. No, they were literally going to camps and starving them and making them work almost as hard, if not twice as hard, than slaves. The movie Schindler's List was out there, directed by Steven Spielberg, and some of the people that were actually Holocaust survivors were consulting on that film, and they were telling them, they were talking to Steven Spielberg, and they told him, how come you're not showing them everything? How come you're not actually showing them the scary parts of the Holocaust? And Steven responded and said, I can't. If we actually show them how horrific the Holocaust was, they wouldn't believe it was that bad. So we have to show them what's believable. But it was way worse. They weren't experimenting on black slaves like they were with the Jewish slaves. Yes, there were exceptions. There were black slaves that were experimented on, but medicine was not nearly as crazy as it was in the 1940s. So what's the difference? Nobody fed a narrative to the Jewish culture that you're victims. You're disenfranchised. You have a disadvantage because you're Jewish. No, Jews run Hollywood. They run the music industry, the TV industry. They run so much of the world because of their influence. And in my life, and I live in Los Angeles, there's lots of Jews out here. I have never seen a Jewish person sitting on the side of the road with a cup in their hand begging for money. Not once. In all my years of living, I've never once seen that. And I rarely ever see Latinos out there on the side of the road doing that. I see the Latinos that I see, they're juggling, they're washing windows, they're actually doing something so they can gain some type of monetary income. But I don't see Jews on the side of the road, but they've had it the worst. Why is it that the majority of people on welfare are people from my ethnic community, are blacks? We can make it say, well, they're making it hard for us. We're so divided against ourselves. That's why it's hard. The difference between us and the Jews is that the Jewish communities are united. They help each other. They have each other's backs. When one succeeds, they bring someone else up to succeed with them. It's part of their religion. It's part of their lifestyle. That's who they are as a people. But when one of us succeeds, you see the leadership of the Black Lives Matter. What's the first thing they did once they got that money? They moved into a neighborhood where there was really no black people. And they didn't invest any money into building up and improving the black neighborhoods they moved out of. That's what I'm saying. The Jews don't do this. As a people, the Jews don't move out of a Jewish neighborhood and leave it there. They actually improve their people. So if we were to be honest about history, we would see it's not a black and white thing. Yes, the Jim Crow laws happened by a bunch of racist whites, but the majority of the world was not racist towards blacks. The powers that be were, but they actually were the minority, which is why the laws changed. The laws don't change if the majority is saying no. The laws only change when the majority says yes. That is a fact you can take to the bank. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 happened as a result of the majority speaking. So if we were to be honest with ourselves and stop looking at the color of the skin and actually start looking at the truth, if we were to start doing our research, I mean, I've been called Uncle Tom and Oreo and all these other little names by people in my own culture. I've never once been called that from a white person. I've been called the N-word, yeah. But I've never been called an Uncle Tom or Oreo or I've heard people come up to me and tell me, oh, you don't talk black. And I started asking, like, how do you talk black? Please answer me that question. I'm curious. How do you talk black? Do I have to say the N-word every 5 seconds like a punctuation mark? Do I have to grab my penis and make myself, look like a hardcore ghetto? That's not how you act black. Black is a skin color. It's a culture. It's not the way you talk. It's who you are. You can't act black. What you're actually saying when you believe that, oh, you don't act black, you're saying you don't act like the stereotype that is associated with blacks, which you're feeding into a negative racial stereotype fed to our ancestors by slave masters. I can keep going on about slavery and talking about how detrimental that has been today. But the fact is that the reason why blacks as a culture are more commonly linked to welfare and to government assistance, the reason why is because we are so divided. When Trump took office, you had a group of blacks going one way and then a group of blacks calling them going the other way. But the fact is, why do so many people hate Trump? Is it because the news told you that he's racist and that he's this and this? Did anybody actually read any of the bills he did? Like, I've never paid attention to politics. And there's a number of things that Trump said that I didn't agree with. A number of things he tweeted that I didn't agree with. But the fact is that our country was safe from other threats when he was there. Now, people will have different opinions about that. I'm not trying to talk about his moral character or whether I want my kid to grow up and be like him. I'm not saying that at all. But everyone here that's listening and everyone that will listen knows that there's always that one person, that one douchebag at work that is effective in what they do. That's why they still work there. They're effective at what they do, but you can't stand them. You hate working with them, but you know beyond doubt this person knows their job and they're good at it. Trump was one of those guys. At times he was a baby. He whined about a number of things. But I've never seen more black people in the White House than when Trump was president. Not even when Dr. King was in there. I've never seen more blacks consistently in the White House, in the Oval Office, than when Trump was president. Also, if you look at the history, if you really do research on this, which I have done research, and again, I've never done political research until he was president because all these people were telling me this guy's racist. He's a Nazi, he's this, he's that. So I'm like, I need to see for myself if this is true. That's what you're supposed to do. If someone tells you something bad about somebody, rather than take their word for it off the bat, because you wouldn't want anybody to start taking, someone else's opinion on you. You would rather them formulate their own opinion based off of their interactions with you directly, correct? I assumed yes is the answer to that question, so I started doing my own research. And I noticed just about every black person in Hollywood had a picture of Donald Trump before he ran for office. Snoop Dogg, Whoopi Goldberg considered him a friend, Joy Behar considered him a friend. They were really close with him before he ran for office. All these black celebrities love Donald Trump, always talk about how generous he was toward the minority groups. He's given millions, if not billions of dollars to minority groups, to Jewish groups, to black groups, to the NAACP. The NAACP has given him awards for how much money he's given, way before he even thought about being president. I looked at the pictures, I did the research, and I saw it with my own eyes. I read the bills he passed. That man fought for Christianity, for free speech. He fought for blacks because for a long time, black kids were very, do you know that the exit exams and stuff like that for school, they're scored differently based off the color of your skin? There's a learning curve. meaning that the standard is lower for blacks than it is for whites. It's harder for whites to get into college than it is for blacks. There was an Indian kid, not Native American, I'm talking about the actual Indian from India. This kid identified as black on his application because it's easier for him to get into college identifying as a black man than an Asian. The standard's higher. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody thinks that's a racist policy. Because when you look at history, the honest, true history, they gave the red tails. The United States government gave pilots, the red tails, weaker, crappier planes and didn't even let them fly like real combat missions. Yet the red tails, these black pilots back then were rising to the occasion and surpassing the standard set by other people. And when they finally gave them missions to fly with, those men were putting numbers on the board left and right. So history has shown again and again that blacks are just as capable as whites or any other race. Again, if you take race out of the equation and just see people, our country will become united. We hear left and right. We hear politicians talking about, I want to unite the people. But the thing is that they're not trying to unite the people. They want to unite them to their views. Unity is not about one group of people coming to the other side. It's about finding a middle ground. When I was growing up, you were allowed to have a different opinion. It was okay. You could speak your opinion and I didn't have to agree with it, and we were still friends. That was my childhood. Now, if you have a Trump t-shirt, you walk outside, you wear Trump, I don't want you to listen to this broadcast thinking about pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I want you to look at the broadcast as just talking about a subject. If you were to walk outside wearing a Joe Biden shirt, nothing would happen to you. People might say some comments to you, like, oh yeah, you voted for this guy who destroyed our economy. They might say something. Oh, you wear a Bernie Sanders shirt. You wear a Hillary Clinton shirt. You wear a Bill Clinton shirt. Wear any shirt you want. Nothing's going to happen. You wear a Trump shirt, you got a great chance of something being thrown at you. Why is that? Is that because Maxine Waters, who was a Democratic politician, actually got on TV without any consequence? Remember, no one actually did anything to her, but she went out there and said, I want you to, when you see someone that's a Trump supporter, I want you to get your friends, I want you to get anyone you can find and form a circle around them. Put pressure on them. Let them know that they're not welcome. Make sure they know they're not welcome. Make sure that we keep putting pressure on them until they realize that supporting Trump is not safe. Look at her words. She said that. But yet, they didn't. There are literally politicians out there telling people to go commit crimes. Literally, Democratic politicians are out there saying, I'm surprised people aren't taking to the streets when George Floyd was killed. I'm surprised people aren't taking the streets. You guys should be taking to the streets. You guys should be demonstrating. You guys should be protesting. And then we have people on CNN saying whoever said a protest was supposed to be peaceful. Then we got other Democratic politicians getting people out of jail after committing crimes and looting and breaking into buildings. They're getting out of jail with no charges filed against them. And then Donald Trump says on TV, we need to go down and march to the Capitol and we need to peacefully protest. His exact words. CNN didn't put the word peacefully on there. Neither did MSNBC and other medias. They wanted you to believe that Donald Trump was calling for a riot, which his words never did that. Yes, there were people in there that were being stupid. There were. But they didn't destroy the building. They didn't burn the building down like the BLM movement did. They weren't out there trying to cause destruction. They went out there and protested. They occupied a space. That's actually what they did. And the fact is that no harm. No one ever came out there and asked, filed charges or tried to impeach Maxine Waters or anyone else who called for that kind of destruction because of the fact that they control the media. But these people are asking us to do things they won't do themselves. They're calling for us to destroy and commit crimes when they're not doing that. Welcome back, Jason.
Yeah, I didn't I actually said what I said, and then I went to other podcasts, and I'm at a restaurant. So I wasn't here for what you said before I came on. I haven't met you before, and I wasn't here for after. So I just was trying to understand if you were unbiased or if you have a bias. Like, if do you come in to look at a situation with either from a point of view of being biased in favor of one of the parties, or are you unbiased?
I honestly was unbiased until I did my research, and then I started looking more to one side because it was more honest with the history that I started seeing.
Which do you think is more honest?
There's a lot of
Republican or Democrat?
both sides have corruption on them. I will always...
I didn't ask you that. There's no political party that's perfect. I believe Jesus was the only perfect person because I'm a Christian. I'm not like somebody that says that. I've been reading the Bible since December 1st, 1986. I challenge anybody to look at my Instagram and look at the Bible that I posted with the picture of my first Bible that I started reading, December 1st, 1986. I don't know, you have a book that you believe in, like the Bible or the Quran or...
Yes, I'm actually Christian, but I don't use this platform to focus on God.
Okay, when did you start believing and reading and believing the Bible?
Again, this platform, I'm born and raised as a Christian. This platform is not about focusing on any type of specific religion or religious beliefs.
Okay,
it's focused on talking about real talk.
I'm just saying that's my bias. I don't have a Republican or Democratic bias. I'm not even American. I was born in Toronto, May 6, 1977. And I can tell you this, I'll just keep it short because I only have 2 and something minutes. As far as I'm concerned, and the majority of Canadians agree with me, and I plan to get in Canadian politics after 2030. Right now, because there's no platform since Donald Trump led, when they had to write the platform, they had a platform when Donald Trump became leader of the Republican Party. They kind of took some stuff out of it that was about condemning Russia because it was pro-Russia, right? They took some stuff out of it.
Your microphone is like, it's muffled a little bit.
Sorry, I'm at a restaurant. So somebody can refer to my profile. I looked briefly at yours, right? As far as I'm concerned, it sounds like you have a Republican bias. As far as I'm concerned, and the majority of Canadians would agree with me, right now, with Trump in charge of it, the Republican Party is a gang. Okay? It's a gang. It's a political it's a gang masquerading as a political party. Donald Trump is the most dishonest president ever in the history of the United States. They counted his lies, and if you disagree, you're lying. I don't.
Thank you very much. Again, I wasn't talking about focusing on Donald Trump as a person or his morals. I was talking about him being effective in protecting the country. He protected us. We were never once attacked by another country. And I'm a veteran, and I've seen the actual threats out there in the world. And again, I said that there are corruptive individuals on both sides. But when I look at the charter of the Republican Party, it lines up far more with Christianity than the Democratic Party does. And as a Christian, that's what I was looking at. And I was actually looking at the fact that one party was actually, like when Obama became the president, he was trying to force same-sex marriage on churches. And I'm like, wait, that's the First Amendment. Like, we're not trying to stop you from living your life, but you can't tell us how we're supposed to believe and impose your beliefs on us. That's unconstitutional. Now, I will stand up and defend anybody's rights to believe and worship how they want. They have that right, and I fully support it as a veteran. I don't have to agree with someone's rights or opinions to support them. But I'm not trying to make this episode about propaganda or pushing propaganda. The whole focus of this episode is being honest about history. People are being fed TV history. Like if you go look back at Japan, back in Pearl Harbor, the way we tell the story is the Japanese came over and they bombed us in Pearl Harbor. And then right after that, we went back and we bombed them in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The fact is that the way the Japanese tell it is that they actually had surrendered after they had bombed us. Some time had actually passed. I forget how much time had passed since the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but our retaliation was actually delayed. And the way the Japanese share the story is that there was some time they actually had surrendered, and we went and bombed them after the surrender, but we always deny, we didn't hear any surrender. Same thing about the Holocaust. When the Holocaust happened, we knew about it, but the way we tell it is that we didn't know that Hitler was going to do all the stuff that he did. We had lots of people talking about the writings and lots of service members in the intelligence units that were saying, hey, Hitler's trying to kill and destroy and exterminate Jews, but we didn't get involved because it didn't benefit America. So there's evil politicians on both sides. Yes, 100%. There are politicians on both sides that just want to take power from you. I'm not saying one politician or one side is righteous, the other side is not. Can't say that because I don't know every individual politician. What I do see and what I have discovered from my research is that one side is being held accountable while the other side is getting away scot-free with everything. Because they're sitting there and talking about Donald Trump causing a riot and causing all this other stuff like that. If you listen to actually every one of his speeches, you can easily get mad at feeling some type of way, but he never once called for a physical bloody riot. He never called for that. And look at the destruction. Look at the if you actually look at the comparison to the January 6th invasion, not invasion, the January 6th occupation of the Capitol, look how much was destroyed. Next to nothing was destroyed. Now look at the BLM riots. The George Floyd riots. If you look at those, you see left and right, stuff was destroyed. I live in Los Angeles. I drove down Santa Monica Boulevard. I drove down Beverly Boulevard. I drove down, I forget the other street that's right next to it, but I drove down these streets. I even took pictures of all these windows that were kicked in, boarded up, destroyed. I used to run a food truck and I saw thousands of people walking down the street, occupying, crossing stuff out, vandalizing things. Nobody got arrested. Yet the January 6th thing happened and nothing was destroyed. Even there's footage of the cops just moving out the way and saying, come on in. There's footage of that. And you got tons of arrests that happen, and those guys are all being held accountable to the law. Whether you're on one side or the other side, if you do something illegal, you should be held accountable. If you illegally occupy the nation's capital, if you illegally occupy it and have an illegal assembly, then legal action should come. Fair, just action should come. If you do BLM riots and you destroy companies and vandalize and all that stuff like that, you should fall under the same exact sword. It shouldn't be justified for one side and then to the other side it's okay. Like that's saying that it's not okay for a man to slap a woman in the face, but it's okay for a woman to slap a man in the face. It's still the same exact thing. It's domestic violence. It's assault. Whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. You're still assaulting somebody. And again, to Jason's point, Jason was over here talking about Trump being corrupt and all this other stuff like that. I wonder how, because remember, people didn't have this opinion of Trump until he became the president. But what I did see is that I watched his campaign very closely. I saw all the promises he promised to make, and he kept just about every one of them. But the thing is that his policies were not flattering to the other parties. So when he wouldn't play ball with the other parties and he was trying to keep his promises and actually do his job like we elected him to do, they started putting stuff out. What is the one word that you can say to make my race go against somebody? Racist. You call Trump a racist, even though he has an undeniable track record of not being that. He might have prejudice in him, being a shrewd, messed up businessman. He's probably screwed over a lot of people to make money in business. He's probably done that. I wouldn't deny it. It's not an uncommon thing, and I'm not justifying him. It's messed up, but it doesn't surprise me that he would have probably screwed over a lot of people in business to make some money. He probably has. But I'm not judging his ethics. I'm not like JFK. JFK was actually pushing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. JFK was doing that. But that man was cheating on his wife every chance he got. but I'm not talking about I'm not focused on his moral behaviors. Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the president in charge that passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, was a well-known racist, a staunch supporter of Jim Crow. And before him, if you look at history and look at the records that we have in our history, actual history, you will see that blacks as a majority were Republican, and they used to thrive under the Republican Party, under Republican policies. They were thriving. They were smarter. They were better educated. They were better and well-mannered. We were thriving. After Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, he is quoted on record as saying, "I will have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years. After he signed that bill, blacks started voting Democrat. That is why our culture in America largely votes Democrat. Ever since that day, we've started saying the Democratic Party actually cares about us. But every Democrat that comes across the line as a president or governor, they all promise the same things. We're going to make better schools for you. We're going to get better jobs for you. And they don't do any of it. We had our current president donated millions of dollars, an absorbent amount of millions of dollars to Ukraine when we can't even get baby formula. Politicians have always been worried about everybody else rather than their own people. And what I'm saying is, if the media were to be true, unbiased, and honest, would we hate Donald Trump as commonly as we do? One thing I've learned about being in the military is the use of propaganda and brainwashing. Brainwashing and propaganda usage is effective when you don't know, and I think I said this in a recent episode, but people don't know when they're being brainwashed. That's how you know it's done right. If you can tell you're being brainwashed, the person who's trying to do it doesn't know what they're doing. The thing is that the people in North Korea, they think that their supreme leader, has a unicorn, that he doesn't poop. They have all these different beliefs about this man, that he's a god. And they don't get to see the outside. They're controlled heavily on what they get to see. It's really interesting. It's really interesting that the people who've come and gained asylum, who have left communist countries, it's really interesting that they were pro-Trumpers. I find that very interesting. And I find it very interesting that they've been trying to warn Americans, saying the policies that the Democratic Party are pushing right now are largely communist. They're trying to silence you, take away your rights, and make everyone believe and say the same thing. That's a communist government. And we're saying, no, that's not communist. That's called free speech. How would you know what communist is more than people who lived in communist countries? That's like trying to, just because you read Men's Health, that you can tell a doctor how the human body is supposed to operate. My whole focus and point of this episode is not to be pro-Trump or anti-democratic. It's about what happens if we actually do our real research. There are too many debates out there where people are making all these claims, and then when they're asked to give evidence behind their claims, and they're saying, why do you believe that? Or give me an example. They say, oh, you're so racist. You're so racist. Give me an example. How am I racist? Oh, well, you said all this stuff on your podcast or on your YouTube page or whatever. And they're like, okay, tell me one thing that I said that was racist. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to quote you. Oh, I'm not going to go back to all that. You know what you said. So you have one large group, and this is very common on this side. I've talked to people on both sides of the aisle. We have one side of the aisle that's making tons of accusations without bringing evidence or specifics. And then we have another side that's largely bringing evidence and specifics behind their arguments. And then when this side with the evidence comes up and brings their specifics and their arguments, then the other side gets mad because they can't counter it with logic. So they start calling names. They start doing name callings and shames, and they try to categorize someone in an enemy, racial antagonistic group. They try to do all that, and then you got Antifa, the anti-fascist government. And the funny thing is that what they're trying to push is actually fascist, but they call us fascist because we don't agree with them. But one of the main qualities of fascism is forcing people to believe what you believe, forcing people to accept what you accept. Like the concept of my body, my choice. We have a large group of people saying, oh, it's my body, my choice. You can't tell me whether I'm going to have an abortion or not. I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Me as a man, actually me as not you, whether I'm a man or female, doesn't matter. The fact is, me as not you, I don't have the right to tell you what you do with your body. But if you ask me my opinion, which is what I'm voting on, my opinion, I don't believe that abortion should be legal. Because a man doesn't have the same rights as a woman. Like, oh, well, the woman has a baby. Well, but the fact is that if that woman decides to have that child and the man doesn't want that child, the woman can still have the child and come after the man for child support, and the man does not have the right to opt out. He can opt out. He has to pay child support, and the state will come after him for that money. They'll take away his taxes. They'll take away, or his tax returns. They'll take away money out of his check and garnish it. They will get their money, and the man is like, dude, it was a one-night stand. I didn't want that kid. But he can't opt out, so why should the woman be able to? It's about equality, right? Now, those same people that are over here saying it's my body, my right, largely, I'm not saying every one of them, but I'm saying largely, those same people were shaming other people for not getting vaxxed, for not getting the poke. So the question they ask is, so when are you going to get the poke? And you're like, I'm not going to. Oh my gosh, are you serious? We have doctors that are over there saying you should get poked. Like the same doctors that said that originally wearing a mask was not going to help out at all. It wasn't going to stop the pandemic. You got people talking about that. That same doctor is like, wearing a mask isn't going to do a big deal. It's not going to do anything. And then next thing you know, they're saying, oh, everyone should wear a mask. Then they're saying, oh, everyone needs to get vaxxed. Everyone needs to get the poke. Now, let me ask you a question. Because I know there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, everyone should get poked. That's something that everyone should be doing. That's your obligation to the community. If you were going to get a brand new Chevy, a brand new car, but that car said the car dealership or the car maker said we haven't tested this car very long. There are some things that could go wrong, and if something does go wrong, you cannot sue us. You can't hold us liable for it. You know, that's it. But you have to drive this car. You're going to be like, you're out your doggone mind. If you truly stand by something, then I should be able to sue you if something goes wrong, correct? You should stand by, like, if Boeing is telling you have to fly in this plane, well, if something goes wrong on this plane, I should be able to sue you because you're telling me that I have no choice but to get on this plane. You better be liable if something goes wrong with this plane. Did you know that there are laws in effect? The federal government has protected each one of those vax makers so that if something happens, they're indemnified, or excuse me, they are unliable. You cannot hold them liable for anything. You can't sue them. They have an immunity. There you go. That's the word. They have an immunity. You can't actually sue them for any reason if something goes wrong. I've known a lot of people, and this is not an exaggeration, I've known a lot of people personally who have gotten the poke and had medical problems, had blood clots, and were in the hospital for like 2-3 weeks. And some of them haven't even recovered. Interesting. And you can't sue them. You lose a family member because something goes wrong with the poke, you can't sue them. The federal government protects them. Why is that? Is it because the federal government is funded largely by Big Pharma? If the news media would have put that to everyone's attention, how many people would have gotten the poke? Most Americans have no idea that's actually a law. But they're forcing you to put something in your body that has not been tested for more than a year when it first came out. How many times have we seen brand new commercials about, oh, when I have headaches, I take Mazepam. Mazepam helps me out. Oh my gosh, it takes my headaches away. Now I have the most beautiful days. Life is great. And then, like 5 months later, if you've had chronic, or excuse me, then you have all these, like, after the Mazepam commercial goes, like, side effects from Mazepam include losing your hair, getting seizures, and they see all this stuff really fast. And then right after that, they're like, don't fret, don't look back. get Mazepam. And you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get Mazepam. And all these doctors were, prescribing it to you and really pushing it because they're getting trips and all these gifts and all these incentives to sell this stuff to you. And then like 5 months later, a year later, all of a sudden you start getting these lawyers. This is a non-lawyer spokesperson. If you've had problems, if you've had prostate cancer, or you've had loss of hair, you've lost your hearing or gone blind, or lost your right foot, your middle toe and your left foot from taking Mazepam, call us. You may be entitled to monetary compensation. Really? So should you really put something in your body that there's not enough data to say it's guaranteed safe? They're trying to say that it's safe, yet they're not talking about, the news media is not talking about how many people are getting sick and injured by the poke. The news media is not telling you that you can't sue if anything goes wrong with you or your loved one. You're like, well, everything, it's okay, but it's not that much of a risk. I don't think the government will ever do something like that to us and put us at that risk. The government will do whatever it takes to get what they want done. You are expendable. If you don't think so, guess again. You can look at your quality of life. Our government our economy is suffering right now, and there are answers that they can take right now to make our economy strong. We could drill on American soil and make our gas drop significantly. They don't want to do that. Why? Because the partners that funded their campaigns behind the wall or behind the curtain, they're making money on us buying them. Nancy Pelosi is worth like 20 something million or something like that, and her job pays her like $200,000 a year. She's making investments. Her husband makes investments and stuff like that. It's called insider trading. When you are the ones that sign off on the bills that affect the trades that you're involved in, but you're so high up, nobody can say anything about you because you're the one in charge of everything. Yeah. I guarantee you not all that money's from insider trading or for a lot of the stuff that they're claiming it is. A lot of that stuff that's coming in is from backdoor deals. It's from dealing with other countries and saying, look, I'll sign this bill over so that you can have these opportunities and stuff like that, but you're going to have to pay me some money under the table. I guarantee you a lot of these politicians have offshore accounts. If you don't think they do, maybe you're brainwashed. But a lot of these politicians are making lots of money and it's unaccounted for. And so a lot of that money is from signing America over to people who just want to make money in other countries. I've learned so much from people who are in the real estate industry, things I've never heard from anyone else. But people who work for multi-billion-dollar corporations in the real estate industry have shared some stuff with me that helped open my eyes to seeing what's really going on in the world today. It is crazy. It is crazy how much is going on right under our nose and we don't realize. Like, one of the things that I learned is that we're threatened every day. When I was in the military, I got to sit on a briefing and I saw a lot of the different targets that terrorist organizations were planning an attack. But we couldn't possibly let everybody know where every target is. Why? Because they wouldn't function. People would be so afraid to go outside, they would starve themselves, they would do anything, and then the economy would fall and anarchy would ensue. That's actually what would happen. So living in ignorance is bliss for us because it's easier to live with things you don't understand and don't know rather than knowing everything. But we would be so much more united. There would be a significant less amount of Karens in the world and Kevins. Funny thing is, I know a Karen and I know a Kevin, and they're great people. But it's just funny whenever I hear those names, I start thinking about my buddies. But if we were to tell the truth about the history of slavery and how bad the Holocaust really was, the Black community would be more united. One of the biggest lies out there is the narrative that cops are focusing on killing Blacks. And they focus on that. Yes, there are a lot of Black people who are targeted unfairly. I'm not saying that's not happening. But we focus so much on that because Black Lives Matter came out for that. Black Lives Matter came out and said, oh, cops are killing Black people. Black Lives Matter too. Black Lives Matter. And people were like, yeah, that's right. But the thing that made me call BS on it was when I heard about a little girl. I think she was like 6 years old. This little girl was murdered while she was sitting in her house. A bullet came right through the wall and killed her. I didn't hear a peep from Black Lives Matter about that. Why? Because it didn't fit their narrative. I didn't hear Black Lives Matter talking about the 600 murders that happened in Detroit one year recently. I didn't hear about the constant black on black crime that is happening every day. Black Lives Matter my butt as an organization. All lives are precious. They should not have made Black Lives Matter. If anything, it should have been Lives Matter. It should have had no color on it. When you add color to something, like that's why for me personally, I oppose BET. I hate BET as an organization. Why? Because it's called Black Entertainment Television. And what do they have on there? A bunch of stereotypical shows. How dare you call a network after my race and then put a bunch of stereotypes on there? They have a type of reading called urban books. That is what BET should be called. Urban Entertainment Television. Not black. You should not have a color attached to a TV network. Because I guarantee you, if the white community were to create white entertainment television, there would be tons of people saying, oh, that's racist, you're entitled, blah, 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 blah. It wouldn't be the same thing. Yet black entertainment television is okay. It's a double standard, and I oppose double standards. My point is that when you attach race to something, you divide in a negative way. And I'm telling you, white people have fought hard for every race out there. And white people also have destroyed so much. Black people have fought hard for every race out there. And black people also have destroyed. There are good and bad in every culture. And if we keep telling only part of the story rather than the entire story, we're going to continue to divide. We're going to continue to see the color of skin first. Dr. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream that one day little black boys and little black girls will be able to play with little white boys and white girls and be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. That was Dr. King's dream. He wanted you to see a man or a woman. He wanted you to see a person before you saw the color of their skin. Yet we are so divided because of the warped history we're being fed, and rarely are we doing our own research. Think about it for a second. If you were to hear about Jesus Christ, even if you don't agree with Bible or anything like that, just consider this just for a thought. I use this because I believe this example is colorful enough to get the point across. If you were to hear about Jesus Christ from somebody else, do you think you would have a better chance knowing about Christ from Satan if Satan were to tell you about Jesus? Or would you like to hear about that from people who actually knew him? Because one person has an agenda to make the other person look bad. Satan would tell you everything you would believe. He's not going to tell you something you're not going to believe because he knows you won't fall for it. But he'll tell you whatever you will believe, and he will twist. He will do what the Pharisees did. He'd be like, oh, yeah, he's supposed to be perfect. He was working on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is supposed to be the most sacred day. They're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. He's out there healing people on the Sabbath. That man was coming to the temple. He caused a riot and a ruckus and flipped all these tables out all over the place and caused a nonsense. People were minding their own business and being peaceful, and he came in there and just destroyed everything. He came over there and he started looking down his nose at the other Pharisees. Well, you know, we honor the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Those guys are honorable people. And he called them hypocrites. Can you believe that? But if you talk to people who actually did know him. It was like, yeah, he healed on the Sabbath. He was serving. He wasn't working to make money. He wasn't working for gain. He was healing somebody. He was helping. That's how the Sabbath is supposed to be spent, helping others. You're supposed to do that every day, regardless if it's a Sabbath or not. And he was calling these people hypocrites because of the fact that they were draining other people's money and they were being fake. They were demanding perfection from other people when they were far from it themselves. He was identifying the hypocritic actions of people who were not supposed to be hypocrites in the eyes of God. He was never looking down his nose. He was trying to help raise them up. So, why did I use that example? Because if you want to know the truth, the first thing you need to do is question your sources. If you want to know about Black people, would you rather hear about it from somebody who has really studied Black culture? Not the biased crap. I'm talking about real Black culture. Who knows about the slavery that were Black slave owners? Who knows about the actual fact that we didn't have it the worst when it came to slavery? Did you know the Irish were enslaved for a very long time as well? Hundreds of years by the Brits. The Irish were enslaved too. The Scots and the Irish, they were hurt. We don't hear them complaining like that. And when they came to America, people like shut their doors to them. They didn't like them. They didn't give them any help. They treated them like garbage as well. They thought they were the low of the low. Yeah, we don't hear the Irish complaining today. We don't see them all divided. We don't see them like tearing each other down. We see them lifting each other up. As soon as an Irish person sees another Irishman, or Scot sees another Scot, first thing they do is they look at him like, "Oh, you're Irish, are ya? Great." And then, they just start showing each other love. "Let me get you a pint," and they buy him a drink and they bond. They bond over similarity. Why is it that my people can't do that? I see these movies when I was growing up. One movie called Soul Food. There's a character in there called Big Mama. That's the grandma, the heart of the family that holds the family together. They had Sunday dinner every Sunday together as a family. I never once had that when I was growing up. Besides with my mother and my younger brother, never once had Sunday dinner with my grandma. Because in my family, they had favorites. My grandma favoritized my auntie and her family, and she didn't favoritize mine at all. One Christmas, my grandma bought this boom box for my cousin. It had a box full of money. Like, it had a lot of money in there. And she gave that to my other cousin. My younger brother and I, we got these really cheap sweaters. We had to watch my cousins open up their gifts first, and then we opened up ours. I had one family reunion in my entire life. One. In over 30 years, I've only had one family reunion. Do you think that has any reason or any effect as to why there's so many Blacks in prison right now? It's because we have lack of family, lack of unity. My culture is so divided because of the warped history that's being fed to us. And then you have all these white people out there apologizing for something they didn't do. They're apologizing for racism. You didn't enslave anybody. Why are you apologizing? I've seen white women bending down at the knee to kiss the shoe of these Black supremacists, apologizing for being slave owners. You didn't enslave anybody. Why are you apologizing? Why are you apologizing for things you didn't do? Not a single white person alive today ever owned a Black slave. If you want to support the cause, stop seeing color. If you want to unite, stop seeing color. If you want to help another race or another person, stop seeing color. And also hold each other accountable. Don't wake up in the morning looking for reasons and ways to get offended just because you disagree with someone's opinion. Defend free speech even if you disagree with it. Don't let people stomp on the views of another person just because they're different. Jason was starting to talk about something, and I cut him off because he was just starting to go on this political, I hate Trump, Trump's a bad person. Like I wasn't talking about that. That wasn't the focus. I wasn't trying to make this a pro or anti-Trump. I was talking about, are we influenced by the type of facts, or excuse me, the type of information being fed to us? Is it true? Because it's really interesting that all of Black Hollywood was a pro-Trumper before he ran for office, and all of a sudden he's overnight racist once he gets sworn in. That can't possibly be true. Like, you can't go from being like the number one pro-Jew person in the world to being Adolf Hitler overnight. It doesn't work that way. So what I'm saying, and the point is, it's time for us to start questioning what we believe. Because I tell you one thing, God loves questions. It's a sign of you wanting to learn. Because I would say the vast overwhelming majority of the Christian umbrella, Baptist, Protestant, Methodist, etc., everyone that follows in the Bible, everyone that believes the Bible to be the Word of God, I believe, and I've never had somebody answer yes to this question, but I believe that the majority of people who follow the Bible have never asked God if the Bible is his word. They've assumed it because society says the Bible's the word of God. Now, the Bible, in my belief, in my understanding, I believe the Bible is the word of God. As far as it's translated correctly and as far as it's interpreted correctly, I believe the Bible is the word of God. Wholeheartedly. That's because I asked. I know that because I asked the Lord if it was true. I asked if it was inspired. So I have a witness from him. But I asked. But the vast majority of people who believe the Bible is the word of God have never asked God if it was true. They just assume it is because everyone calls it the word. Because back in the early days when you would go to court and have to testify, you always had to place your hand on a Bible. And the Bible in society was treated with such respect and reverence because it's the word of God. Yet people don't have their own individual testimonies of the truth and power of that book. That's what I'm saying. Stop accepting something just because somebody told you this or you heard it from something. Even my words. You don't need to believe what I'm saying. Put it to the test and see if it's true. Remove your emotional attachment to the Bible and actually put it to the test. If the Bible is true, it will stand on its own feet regardless if you support it or not. If Trump actually was an effective president, the only way you'll know that is if you take all your emotions out of the equation. Take all your emotions out of it, whether you like him or not. Take that out. Don't look at that. Look at his policies. Read his policies. Actually read the real bills he signed in executive order. Actually look at the actual statistics of what he actually did from trusted sources. And then you make your own opinion. Because it's okay to say, I don't like the person's personality, but he was effective in what he did. That's okay. You don't need to like somebody to support their work ethic. I know lots of people at work in my previous work history that I didn't like throughout my life. There's always that one person you're just like, oh my gosh, dude, I wish you would just like run into a pole from time to time. It would improve your face. Like, I can't stand you. Like, you would have these animosity opinions of people. But the fact is that if we would question everything we're told and put it to actual research, we would form our own opinions. Wouldn't that be nice? Instead of letting other people tell us how we're supposed to feel. Because I can't tell you how tired I am of hearing people tell me I'm disadvantaged because of the color of my skin. But when I do the research, I'm like, I'm actually not disadvantaged. Because the majority of professional athletes across all sports spectrums are black. The majority of the NFL is black. The majority of Major League Baseball, Latino, and a lot of those are black Latinos. From the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, from Panama, like from different parts of Latin America, there's blacks from those countries. Soccer, we got tons of Latinos and tons of blacks. So am I really disadvantaged? How many chiefs of police are black? Am I really disadvantaged? How many police officers are black? Am I really disadvantaged? How many politicians are black? Am I really disadvantaged? How many principals and superintendents of school districts are black? Disadvantage my butt. If we were so disadvantaged, politicians and presidents and candidates would not come and kiss our butt for votes because we wouldn't matter. If you were the minority, they don't care about you for campaign purposes. Your voice isn't loud enough. So if you take anything from this episode, and I really hope you do, stop seeing race and question everything you hear, everything you read. Question the sources. Do your own resource or your own research. Don't just believe it because it was on TikTok or Instagram or on MSNBC. They have an agenda to sell a story. And whether you want to believe it or not, the fact is that they have bosses who are influenced by other people. So of course they have an agenda and they have an angle. They're not going to tell you everything that's actually happening because it doesn't benefit them. We hear all these politicians talking about, oh, global warming and the new Green Deal. We need to stop the global warming. It's happening. Then why are you still flying in planes all over the place? Why aren't you riding a bike or walking? How come you keep going on all these different plane trips? If global warming is that bad, why are you flying so much? I watched this video and this guy was talking about every 10 years, there's some type of fear factor that they use. Like, oh my gosh, it's the earth is going to, glaciers are going to just get destroyed in 10 years. Doesn't happen. Oh my gosh, global warming's happening. It's going to get destroyed in 10 years. It's always some type of fear factor, and taxes go up every time. Every 10 years, taxes go up to accommodate some new policy that is pointless. But then how many people are actually looking at all the policies in effect and seeing how many are not unnecessary? Very few, if any at all. That's because more money is being used and are throwing money to all these different causes that have no effect, that make no sense, that are unnecessary. To my dear listeners, please help the cause. And what the cause that I'm talking about is unity. If you disagree with someone's opinion, you have that right, but don't silence them. Especially if it's in the right demographic, if it's in the right area. If they're in church and they come in your church and they start talking about how Jesus is corrupt and all this stuff like that, then yeah, that's the wrong venue for that type of activity. But the fact is that if they're outside and they're doing it, treat them with respect and defend their right to free speech, because it's the same right that protects your free speech. You censor one person, you're encouraging the government to censor you too. You take away the rights from one person, yours are on the chopping block next. Before I conclude, is there anybody that has anything else that they'd like to add to this conversation or to this topic? I definitely welcome your feedback. I would love to hear from you. I just really want people to wake up. That's all. Because kids are growing up these days without consequence to their opinions. They're talking back to their parents. When I talked back to my mom on my 13th birthday, it was actually the day after I was 13 years old. She asked me to do something and I said, I'll do it later. She said, what? I said I'll do it later. My mom is not like athletic. She's not super skinny, but for somehow she jumped from the doorway. Like she became Spider-Woman for like a second. She jumped from the doorway onto her bed when I was watching TV in her room, and just like, she like pounced on me like a lion. And I'm not exaggerating on that. She really did this. I don't know how she came, but she jumped and she looked me in my eyes and said, if you ever in your life talk to me like that, I will pull your tongue out. She said, I brought you in this world. I will take you out. That's old school parenting right there. She told me that one time I never again spoke back to her. Like, I never talked back to her. I never gave her any lip, nothing. I learned my lesson because I knew she was serious. The kids these days, they talk any way they want to their parents. They tell their parents, "Get out of my room." I told that to my mom after I found my teeth. She would have removed the door and said, "All right, this is your room. You're going to start paying rent. This is my house. There's no doors in my house now. You don't get a door." She would take away my door. She'd take away everything else and give me only what I paid for. And since I was young, I didn't have a job. I wouldn't have had anything. She's like, "I am by law obliged to clothe you and feed you and keep you sheltered. That's it. You don't need a blanket. You just need shelter." So you have all these kids that are acting without consequence. You have parents that are out there fighting for people who are in the military because their kid is spoiled. They join the Marine Corps, they join the military, and then they go to boot camp, and then they have a breakdown because they don't know how to handle the stress. So then their parents go and said, "You have no right to yell at my son," and this and this and this and this. Like, have you ever fought a war before? Because your enemy's not going to care about their feelings. Your enemy's going to torture them. If they break down from being yelled at by a drill instructor who's actually on their side, what makes you think they're not going to break down and tell top secrets, that actually are going to cause the lives of tons of people? You have parents giving their kids participation trophies, and these kids are growing up without the understanding of accepting loss or accepting disappointment and dealing with it. They don't know how to deal with disappointment. So what do they do as a result when they get disappointed or mad? Rather than stand up for themselves or rather than speak about it and learn a healthy way to vent, they go get a gun somehow. And then they go shoot people and kill people. And then politicians, like clockwork, always want to go, "We need to make stricter gun laws. We need to make stricter gun laws because this shouldn't be happening. This is always happening." Like, no. That's not what's happening. These people, for the majority of them, are using guns illegally. They don't have a legal gun for the majority of them. And the answer is, I have an episode about this in one of my previous broadcasts, but the answer to actual gun violence, as common as it is to add more guns. Give more guns to people. People aren't shooting each other like this in the military. People ain't shooting like this in places where there's lots of guns. You don't have this kind of stuff happening at gun ranges. It's rare. It's very rare compared to all the people that go to gun ranges. They're not shooting each other. Why? Because they know someone else has got a gun. And I probably get like one round off before somebody gets me. So if somebody was going to go in there to shoot a bunch of people up and they knew everybody has a gun, they're very unlikely to do it. How many of our schools will be shot up if, how many schools will be shot up if they knew teachers had guns? How many of our schools will be shot up if more teachers, more police, more security were armed? People aren't going to go there and sit there and shoot all these kids up like that because they know there's a dire consequence awaiting them if they do. They're very less likely to do it. Now, there's always going to be an exception, but the likelihood significantly decreases when they know that the risk of death on them is much higher. Hey, Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. A great example of what you just shared comes from my Uncle Steve. He lives on the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska. He said, "Greg, we don't have a lot of shootings up here because everybody's freaking armed."
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so simple.
Yep.
In my state, you used to have a permit. That permit gave you the ability to carry either open or concealed. I choose concealed. Our current governor has changed it to you don't need a permit. Now, if you are arrested for something non-related and you happen to have a criminal record, this, that, and the third, then, we'll have some conversations about whether you can carry a gun or not, but you don't need a permit in the state of Tennessee to own a firearm and carry it.
Nice.
And that's a good thing. And that's, it's one of the reasons why I love living in this state. I remember a really weak argument. I'm sure you've heard it before. Someone said, "If you're carrying a gun, you are just looking for a gunfight." And I would answer simply like this. Do you have a jack and a spare tire in the trunk of your car? Oh, you do? Well, you're just looking for a flat tire on the side of the interstate during rush hour, aren't you?
That's a great counter argument. I love that.
Yes, it's a tool that is, nobody wants to use it. They really don't. Changing a tire, number one, is a pain in the ass. And number two, can be very dangerous depending on the conditions of the road.
Yeah.
You only use that tool if you absolutely have to. Guns are the same thing.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
like, and what they're trying to do, like, because when I remember when I went to Iraq, we actually went on a civilian flight to take us to Kuwait, and every one of us had a rifle. And there were two, we all had our issued rifles, and there were two people on there that were armed just to make sure that nobody tried to do anything to the other shooter or to the other soldiers.
Mhm.
But none of us were scared of the guys who had armed or had ammunition. And none of us were scared of any other Marines who had rifles, because
Yeah.
none of us had bad intentions. The only people that are scared of people with guns are those who have bad intentions.
Yep.
And I'm specifically talking about the carriers who like are carrying the right way.
Yeah.
But if the government is really trying to get guns away from us, is it maybe because they have bad intentions and they can't make those bad intentions reality until we are disarmed?
Yeah. I'm down to 15 seconds on my mic on this end. Thanks for opening up the mic. I greatly appreciate it. Keep it rolling, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Take care, buddy.
You as well. Yeah, it's just like if people were to be honest and tell the truth, there will be so much less chaos going on. If more Americans, excuse me, not just Americans, if more people, period, would just call the news as they honestly see it. You're down on the ground, rather than sit there, like when BLM riots happened, rather than sit there and go, oh, well, these people are mad, they're super hurt about what happened to George Floyd. That's obvious, that's understandable. But none of those reporters were actually talking about what was really going on. They're looting, they're vandalizing, they're destroying this building, they're going over here. This has nothing to do with George Floyd. This has everything to do with people capitalizing to get free TVs. These people aren't over there trying to, talk about getting laws changed. How come the politicians that are calling for this type of action, the violence out there, why aren't they actually educating people on changing laws? Because peaceful protests change laws. Because it puts the pressure on the government the right way. Unity changes laws. Government, those politicians don't want us to change laws. Why? Because if we unite and learn how to change laws, we kick them out of office and we take our country back. They don't want that. Because they want to disarm us while they got surrounded by armed security that we pay for. Because I read this post, and it's 100% right, in my opinion. If they're over here trying to pass laws to say they want to take away guns, they call it assault rifles or assault weapons. Assault is a crime. It's anything you do to cause bodily injury or uninvited contact with somebody else. That's assault. So any weapon you use to assault somebody is an assault weapon. There's no category of weapons called assault weapons. They are using that term to make you hate weapons, hate guns. I can use a bat as an assault weapon. I can use my hands as an assault weapon. I can use a chopping knife. There's more violence with knives than there are guns. So should they also take away the knives that you use to cut your steak? Of course not. So if a law really is for the betterment of everybody and they want to take away weapons, then we should also unite and put a law out there and actually put a bill out and get it signed and vote on it and say, okay, so you're going to take away our guns, we're going to take away your security, because you should not have the right to defend yourself when I can't have that same right. If you really believe guns are bad, then the military needs to be disarmed, your security needs to be disarmed, and all of us need to be disarmed. If guns are really that bad, it will go across if really guns are that bad, then it will go across the board. Why wouldn't they do that? Well, you're not going to disarm the military because then other countries will come invade us and we can't defend ourselves. You're not going to disarm the politicians who are trying to disarm us because people can get access to them. And people can go walk right up there and punch them, beat them up, kill them, do whatever they want to, and they don't have any protection. But if you disarm us and they want to do anything they can, they control the military, so they can make the military do to us what the Germans did to the Jews if they wanted to. And we couldn't do anything about it because we're disarmed. That's the danger of disarming the citizens. We are the most armed population in the world. That's why we're not invaded. It's not just our military. The militaries all around the world know that if they were to try to invade America, not only do they have to get past the military, but they also have to face a ton of patriots who are armed. So we have another guest on, and this is Renee. Welcome, Renee.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome to the show.
I love your passion.
Thank you.
Do you feel that all this is just a reason to control completely
I agree.
what's going on?
I feel that like the powers that be, both on the left side of the aisle and the right, there are people who are bought out by other countries. I've been looking at a lot of things going on. I've been looking at the quality of men. Like I've said in a previous broadcast, men used to be tough. They would stand up for themselves. They were husky. We had muscle because we worked. We had a strong work ethic. We were solid. We were all tough as men, as what men were. Now you're seeing more commonly, it's scrawny boys that are entitled, that have no masculinity. They're erasing the identity of what a woman is. So they're taking away the strength.
Yes.
So what does that do? That makes us ripe for invasion from another country, because the majority of the military is male. So if you emasculate men, you weaken the military significantly. The front lines, over 99% of the front lines are males. So if you emasculate men and remove the identity of women, you make us ripe for invasion for the people who own the politicians running our country. And I believe that's what this is all about.
I also believe that, the more that the government passes out and, people don't work, that eventually we become the puppets. We're usable because we're trained.
Yep.
Where's our food going to come from if we don't know how to raise it, or we don't know how to budget for it, if we don't know how to make ways to pay our bills, if everything's paid for.
That's a great point. Because if the government controls where all the food comes from, then they can manipulate the entire country.
And they control more than that. I mean, I know people, and I'm not saying that, people don't need help and that you're stuck at times, but like my mom's generation, which she's still that way, she still wastes nothing. You cut back.
Yeah.
You didn't have the luxury. It was by your work that you had. And if you didn't have it, it was okay. You still made it. Now we've become a society where everything is handouts. And people are upset when the handout isn't enough, or they didn't get enough this month, and and they eat better than, and they don't even eat healthy.
Yeah.
So it makes us weak.
It is.
Because that would almost create an army for the government. Because when eventually it's going to fall. We have monopoly money. They're not passing out. We're so in debt. It's monopoly money.
Yeah.
And so when you run out of all this, what are people going to do? They're going to be at those doors of the government, and they're in chains.
Yep.
And I think that's weakened, not only men and women, because, in households, men are part of that.
Absolutely.
So they don't have to go work like they used to, or like their dads did, or their grandfathers did.
Most people in this world these days that have no idea how to work with their hands. Everything's on computer and phone now. It's crazy.
Oh, yes. When I worked the pharmacy, it drove me crazy because there was
Feel free to call back, Renee. I know your microphone cut off. Feel free to call back. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the work ethic these days is not stress as much. And honestly, another thing too, just for consideration, is that if these politicians really cared about helping us like they say, they would teach independence more. They would help us learn to be self-resilient. The welfare program should not be something that you could just live off of forever. There should be incentive. Like, if you're able-bodied to work, you can work, you should work. And you should provide for yourself and be independent. But why would they not want you to be independent? Because they have power if they have what you need. Like, if you need bread and I'm the only bakery in town that has bread, I can make my bread as expensive as I want it because you'll pay for it if you need it. So
exactly,
if the government has all the control of the food and they have all the power, then we go begging to them rather than them begging to us. And it's supposed to be the founding fathers made this country so the politicians would beg to us because they work for us. They are our voice and they're supposed to say what we want them to say. But now it's the other way around because the politicians and the media have divided us so much that now we're begging to them. It's backwards. Like, parents are now pleading to their kids for respect rather than the parents getting respect from the kids.
Exactly, and it is. I actually am raising my grandkids, and it is a different generation of children. And I will stick to what I taught the first ones. You will earn what you will earn. And my oldest grandson, I actually, because he kept punching holes in the wall, called the police on him. And that police officer told him, he says, I have kids, and he says, let me tell you something. The only thing that she owes you is a bed to sleep on, and you don't have to have fancy sheets. She owes you clothes, and he says, and that can come from the resale shop. He said, and food. And he says, actually, that can be rice and beans and throwing it in vegetable. He says that everything else is a privilege. And he says, I want you to walk into that house and take out every electronic thing that you have, and she's going to lock it up. It's like, yes.
Yep. That must have been an old school cop, because like, those are the kind of cops that we had when I was growing up as well. The cops that actually would help parents parent, not parent for them, because they didn't want, these cops did not want to lock these kids up. They wanted to help stop them from getting locked up later on in life.
Exactly. And you want your children, when I grew up, you worked. My first job, I was 15, and it was when Wendy's came out. You worked as a child. You didn't leave the house until your chores were done. And, we grew up with a garden and canning and all that, which right now I'm totally grateful for, because I have the ability to truly take care of, my family, because my parents passed those skills. And I listened.
I remember the days when I used to want to go out to my friend's house or just go spend time like a block or 2 blocks away. All I had to do was just yell, "Mom, I'm going to so-and-so's house." And I knew to be back when the lights come on. Like, it was that simple.
Oh, yeah.
These days, kids see a very suspicious van and they're like, ooh, that looks like fun. I'm gonna go sneak into that van. Like, what happened to that
Yes.
street smart that we used to have?
Well, and I even, am strict because, like I said, I worked in a pharmacy, and when we started bringing in younger people, they had no communication skills. They never put down their phone. I thought, what do you have to talk about? You're at work.
Yeah.
And I would have meeting after meeting. It's like, look, I'm 50 years old, and I'm running around here doing my job, your job, fixing your job of the mess you've made. You don't see the phone in my hand. And we had girls that didn't even know how to sweep a floor. I had to teach them to sweep a floor and wash a toilet.
Wow.
And I just, it amazed me. And I thought, I come home and I'm like, no, that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Renee. I really appreciate that. Man, yeah, it's crazy because now these kids get caught on their phones and at work. Then you tell them, hey, you got to put your phone away. And they're like, oh, gosh, man, it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, are you serious? Like, how in the world are you tripping about me telling you to do your job? I'm literally paying money to you to get you to do your job. You're doing exactly what I hired you to do. Like, that's insane. And it's like the world has changed today largely with the quality of people who are willing to work. Like, you might find all these nice little gentle looking people like, well, I really want my husband or my fiance, my boyfriend or whatever. He's gentle, he's nice, and he's safe, and I love him so much, and he's not violent. Look, that's all nice and beautiful until somebody tries to break into your house in the middle of the night and you're sleeping and you have kids. You're not going to want a nice, gentle sweetheart to go face that enemy, because he's going to go downstairs and be like, look, I'm going to call the police. And then the bad guy's just going to be like, well, guess what? I'm already here. The cops still got to get here. You're going to want someone that's going to be top hardcore masculine to get up and like, pull out his rifle or pull out his gun and then go down there and go hunting for some bad guys. That's who you're going to want to protect your family. If we're all honest with ourselves, that's who we want in that time. We don't want a gentle giant when someone breaks in our house. We want somebody with a pair who's not afraid to go die for their family and who's willing to take a life if that means keeping their baby safe. I don't care how non-combative you are. When it comes down to protecting your babies and protecting your family, you're not going to go out there. No person in their right mind is going to go down and be like, hi, look, you can't be here. I don't approve of you here. It's offensive that you're here. No, you want somebody that's going to like go bust some skulls, pull out a crowbar or baseball bat or something like that and go hit some home runs, to the back of that person's head. You're not going to, if like your husband goes downstairs and beats the crap out of the guy that broke in and try to hurt you guys, what wife in her right mind is going to go down and be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? We are a non-violent house. No. You're probably like, yeah, that's what you get. You don't break into the house. You broke into the wrong house. And then you guys are going to have, great actions afterwards, because you're going to look at your husband like, babe, you're so hot right now. Oh my gosh. You're going to reward him. And he's going to be like, yeah, people need to break into our house more often. I'm just saying. But anyway, with all my heart, I really appreciate every one of you guys who called in to contribute. Thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate that. I love that. I really love hearing your guys' voices. I love hearing what you guys think. Again, I'm at any time when I'm giving a broadcast, I invite anybody to come on. I want you guys to come on. I want you to interact. I love you guys coming on. I'm not looking for a debate. I'm looking for a discussion. I don't want to turn it into a fight, because fighting doesn't do anything when you're both verbally arguing. It doesn't solve anything. But when you have a discussion, you may actually have more evidence than I do. But now that gives me an opportunity to go look and verify your evidence, and it gives me time to learn. That's what I want to do. I want to learn. I want to improve. I want to learn as much as I can about anything I can learn about. It's not about fighting emotionally. It's about fighting with logic, fighting with evidence, but exchanging. That's an old art that needs to be reborn, where it's okay to have a different opinion, where two people can disagree but still respect each other. That's what I'm using this platform to do. That's why, and it wasn't about silencing Jason when he came on. It wasn't about silencing him. It was about the fact that he was trying to do something on this platform I don't support. I don't support villainizing a person's opinion. Like, oh, no, I asked you a question. You either choose one or the other. Like, no, you can't, because the fact is that my answer is not what you want it to be. Therefore, it's not right. That's not what I do. I'm not trying to do a debate. I'm not trying to talk about whether Trump was an angel or whether he was a devil. I'm not trying to talk about that. I wasn't talking about his character. When I started talking about him, I started asking, are we manipulated by the media? Would we feel the same way about him if the media was honest? That was a question just to consider. And the only way a person can come to that opinion is not by reading all his tweets, not by listening to the news and The View and all these other TV shows and talk about him. It's by actually reading his policies, reading the things that he actually did pass, reading about all the black people that went into the White House every day because of him, reading all the black people that made it out of prison early because of him, all the black people that were pardoned because of him. You know, if you look at it, if you look at the actual numbers, look at the actual data, rather than listen to the opinions of other people who don't like them, what's the likelihood you're going to get facts if you're listening to somebody who doesn't like somebody else? What's the likelihood? Very unlikely that you're going to get real facts, real unbiased facts, if you're listening to a biased person. That's what I'm talking about. That was why I started talking about Trump, because he's a hot topic. People feel one way or the other. Either people are super pro-Trump or they're super anti-Trump. It's rare that you find someone in the middle. But the fact is that I wasn't asking people to be pro or anti. I'm asking them to make their own opinion based off of their actual research and evidence, as opposed to researching things that only line up with what you want to believe. You're never going to find the truth if you're only willing to look at things you want to look at. You have to look at stuff you might not agree with or might not like because it's true. If a hypocrite comes and tells me that I'm arrogant and I am arrogant, then I need to change something about myself. There's no difference from that hypocrite telling me versus my best friend. If I'm being arrogant, the fact is I'm being arrogant, whether it's coming from a hypocrite's mouth or someone I love. Truth is truth, regardless of your opinion. And the fact of the matter is that more of us need to do more research and actually find truth, rather than look for things that appear as evidence to support our own beliefs or support our own angles. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to push on this episode. Please do your own research. Please look at actual history rather than history according to your race, history according to your party, history according to your religion, history according to any specific thing. Look at truth as truth is. And don't fall into the lie of I'm living my truth. Because I can say my truth is that I'm a dolphin. And I expect everyone to call me dolphin. I identify as a dolphin and my pronouns are dolphin. You have to identify me as that. That's my truth. People are gonna look at me like, dude, you're insane. You're not a dolphin, you're a human. You're not living a truth, you're living a lie. That's what I'm saying. If you want to be a man who loves a man or a woman who loves a woman, I'm not here to judge you. If you want to identify as a different sex, that's your choice. You have that right. I'm not here to judge you. But my opinion is my opinion. I come to my opinion based off of my research. I love everybody the same. I treat everybody with respect until you tell me I can't. That's who I am. That's why my podcast is called Real Talk with RJ, because I call it like I see it. I don't see it by race. I see it by actual truth. And if I ever say something that is not correct because my logic or my evidence is questionable, which I do my best to absolutely not do that. I try to be well researched. But if for some reason I do that, I expect somebody to come in and actually help me. I'm not, just because you hear my voice being here alone doesn't mean I'm alone here. Like, you guys are here too. I need your help as well, because I want to learn truth. So I need your help to find truth that I'm missing. I'm not talking about biased opinions to make me follow what you believe. I'm talking about actual truth. Truth is truth regardless of my opinion. The sky is the sky whether I believe in it or not. That's truth. And that's what this podcast is about. Real truth. So thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate each and every one of you who participated. I appreciate each and every one of you who stayed on. Please follow me on this on this platform, and also please head over to my actual podcast platform, Real Talk with RJ. It's available on Spotify. It's available on Google Play or Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. It's available anywhere podcasts are available. So please go check it out. I got other content on there. And you can also check out my book, Soul Guardian by RJ Kurtz. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's a very unique angle on vampires. It's so cool. It's a great book. I love it. I love reading it. I'm working right now on the audiobook. I've just been trying to get more content out there for more episodes of my podcast. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. If you ever want to send me an email, feel free. My email is Ross, ROSS, Curtis, CURTIS, the numbers 723@gmail.com. Feel free to send me a message. Put the subject podcast, so I know that it's something there, so I won't mistake it as junk mail or anything like that. So again, that's ross.curtis, ross.curtis723@gmail.com. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really enjoyed this time with you. Have a great evening, or whenever you're listening to this, whether it's later on in the day, have a great day. Thank you so much for spending time with me on Real Talk with RJ, signing out.